My parents looked my 3 children in the eyes, heard my 4-year-old ask where we were going to sleep, and still locked the door. 18 months later, those same people stood outside my apartment asking for another chance after a judge ruled in my favor. My cheating husband lost the family he thought he controlled, and my 10-year-old daughter revealed to an entire school exactly what happened that night. My name is Linnea Rourke, and this is the story of how losing one home forced me to build the only one that truly belonged to us. Chapter 1. The Door They Closed. The porch light above my parents' front door was bright enough to make every detail impossible to ignore. The black trash bag at my feet, the school backpacks hanging from Maisie's and Elowen's shoulders, the small canvas bag with Arlo's allergy medicine tucked under my arm, the way all 3 of my children were standing close enough to touch me, as if they already understood that whatever happened next might decide where we slept. It was May 18, 2024, and the evening air in Edina still carried a trace of spring cold. I had driven 20 minutes from Bloomington, believing my parents would give us a place to stay for a few weeks. Their house had 4 bedrooms. One belonged to my parents, one belonged to my 33-year-old brother Landis, who still lived there without paying rent. My mother used another as a sewing room, but there was a folding bed against the wall. The guest room was almost always empty. The finished basement had a bathroom, a sofa, and its own entrance. There was room. That was never the real question. My father opened the door only halfway. Bowenvale had always been a broad man, even after retirement, softened his shoulders. That night he stood with one hand on the door and one foot planted behind it, as if he had already decided how far we were allowed to come. He looked at me, then at the children, then at the trash bag. He did not step aside. "Your mother and I talked," he said. I waited. He cleared his throat and looked past me toward the driveway. "We think you need to go home and work this out with Gavin." I thought I had prepared myself for resistance. I had not prepared myself for that. "Dad," I said, "I am not asking to move in forever. I need a few weeks. I need time to find an apartment and keep the kids in the same school district. Temporary support has not been ordered yet. I will handle food, transportation, everything. I just need somewhere safe for them to sleep." His face tightened. "Gavin made a mistake, Linnea. That does not mean you destroy an 11-year marriage." Behind me, Arlo shifted against my leg. "Are we going inside?" he asked. Before I could answer, my mother appeared behind my father. Livette Vale wore the same pale blue sweater she often wore to church events. Her hair was neat, her expression composed, and her voice had the calm firmness she used when she believed she was correcting someone for their own good. "Gavin provides for those children," she said. "He has a stable job and a stable home. You are letting your emotions make decisions that will affect them for the rest of their lives." "He had been sleeping with another woman for 8 months," I said. My mother barely reacted. "People make mistakes in marriage. 8 months is not one mistake. Do not turn this into a public spectacle," she said. "People at church know both families. Think about what this will do to the children." I looked at her and realized something that hurt almost as much as Gavin's betrayal. She was not afraid I would be unhappy if I went back. She was afraid other people would know I had left. Footsteps sounded behind her. Landis came up from the basement with headphones around his neck and a can of soda in his hand. Through the open hallway behind him, I could see the glow of 2 gaming monitors downstairs, the corner of a sectional sofa, and the stainless steel door of his mini refrigerator. He glanced at the bags, then he smiled. "There really is not room, Lynn," he said. The laugh that followed was quiet, almost lazy. It was worse than open cruelty because he sounded amused. Landis had an entire bedroom and nearly the whole basement. He worked freelance IT jobs when he felt like it and had not paid rent in years. Yet he was standing inside my parents' warm house telling me there was no room for 3 children. Bryony appeared next. My younger sister had been married for less than 2 years, but she spoke with the confidence of someone who believed a wedding ring had made her an expert on every marriage. "Gavin is not a bad person," she said. "You know that. People mess up. You have to think about stability, especially now. At least he can give them a real home," Landis added. I looked at Bryony. "Do you think a house is stable when the person holding it together is being lied to inside it?" She looked away. Arlo tugged my coat. "Mom, where are we sleeping?" My father finally looked directly at him. For 1 second, I thought that might change something. It did not. Elowen understood before Maisie and Arlo did. She was 10, old enough to hear the words adults thought children missed, old enough to recognize when hope was becoming humiliation. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Are we homeless?" Every instinct in me wanted to say no. I wanted to promise her that mothers always had answers and doors always opened when children were standing outside. But she was watching my face too carefully for a lie. "Not for long," I said. "I am figuring out the next step." My mother touched my father's arm. "Bowen," she said. He understood. He stepped back. The door closed. Then I heard the lock turn. No one shouted. No one needed to. The sound of that lock followed us all the way to the minivan. Maisie climbed into the second row and tried to smile. "Maybe the motel will be like an adventure," she said. Arlo asked if motels had pancakes. Elowen said nothing. She kept looking through the window at my parents' house until I turned onto the next street. 4 days earlier, I had still believed my life was difficult, but intact. I had been married to Gavin Rourke for almost 11 years. He was 39 and worked as a regional sales director for North Star Freight Solutions in Minneapolis. His base salary was about $118,000, and with bonuses, he had earned close to $137,000 the year before. I worked 28 hours a week in medical records at Lakeview Community Medical Center in Bloomington. I earned $24 an hour. I had once worked full-time, but after Arlo was born, the cost of daycare for 3 children nearly erased the difference. Gavin and I agreed that I would reduce my hours. Later, he began treating that agreement like proof that he had built our life and I had merely lived in it. I was the one the school called. I knew the date of Arlo's next appointment and the dosage of his allergy medicine. I packed every permission slip, winter coat, water bottle, and emergency snack. Gavin attended birthday parties and school concerts. He was good at moments people photographed. I handled everything that happened between them. On May 14th, he left his phone unlocked on the kitchen island. A message appeared from Celeste Ward, a 31-year-old sales account manager at his company. She asked whether he had told me about the hotel yet. I opened the thread. 8 months of messages, hotel receipts, weekends he had called business travel. 2 nights he claimed to be in Chicago when he had stayed less than 15 miles from our house. When I confronted him, Gavin did not raise his voice. He said our marriage had been distant. He said I cared more about the children than about him. He said Celeste made him feel seen. Then he told me one relationship outside the marriage should not destroy a family. I asked if he would end it and go to counseling. He leaned against the kitchen counter and looked at me almost patiently. "You are going to leave with 3 kids and live on a part-time paycheck." That was when I understood he did not believe I would go. He thought money had already answered the question for me. The next morning I met Simone Carter, a family law attorney in Minneapolis. She told me the affair would not decide custody. She told me not to interfere with Gavin's relationship with the children. She told me to document the care I had provided file for temporary support and keep the children close to their school and daycare. The Bloomington house was a rental tied to Gavin's corporate relocation package. His name was the primary name on the lease. After I confronted him, he began saying that if I wanted a divorce, I should be the one to leave. He said Celeste was not disappearing from his life. He suggested she might come to the house whether I liked it or not. Elowen heard one of those arguments from the hallway. Simone told me to document everything and move the children somewhere safe while the court addressed temporary arrangements. I believed my parents would give us that safe place. Sitting in the motel parking lot later that night, I replayed every word from the porch. Emotional, punishing him, stability. They were Gavin's words, not just similar words, his exact language. He had spoken to them before I arrived. I did not yet know what he had told them, but I knew he had reached the door before I did. The motel near Interstate 494 had 2 beds, a microwave, a small refrigerator, and a bathroom so narrow the door nearly touched the toilet. Maisie claimed one side of a bed for herself and Arlo. Elowen began arranging the medicine bag on the dresser. My phone rang. It was Simone. Gavin had filed a motion for temporary custody. He was asking the court to make his house the children's primary residence while the divorce was pending. His reasons were simple. He had a stable home. I had taken the children to a motel. He earned more money than I did. I looked at my children as they tried to turn one cramped room into somewhere they could sleep. Gavin did not only want me to come back, he wanted to use the fact that I had left an unsafe situation as proof that I was the unstable parent. Chapter 2. The Life No One Saw. The next morning began at 5:15 with the microwave humming and Arlo asleep sideways across the foot of my bed. I heated instant oatmeal in paper cups, sliced 2 bananas with a plastic knife, and packed what was left into 3 lunch bags. The motel room smelled like coffee, laundry detergent, and the faint chemical sweetness of the air freshener plugged into the wall. By 6:10, Elowen and Maisie were dressed. Arlo was sitting on the carpet, trying to put both shoes on the same foot. We left before 7. First Cedar Ridge Elementary, then Bright Steps Early Learning Center, then Lakeview Community Medical Center. The motel was close enough to Bloomington that I could keep the children in their regular schools, but every morning still felt like a timed obstacle course. One traffic light could make me late. One missing permission slip could throw off the entire day. I learned to keep everything in the minivan: extra clothes, granola bars, Arlo's medicine, phone chargers, a folder containing copies of every document Simone told me to preserve. For 34 nights, the minivan became the closest thing we had to a storage room. The motel cost $92 a night after the extended stay discount. I had left Gavin with $4,900 in my separate account. That number looked almost comforting until I started subtracting. Motel, gas, daycare, food, the minivan payment, Simone's retainer, 3 children who still needed ordinary things while our lives were anything but ordinary. Elowen began changing before I understood what I was seeing. Her teacher emailed that she had fallen asleep for a few minutes during silent reading. She forgot an assignment she had completed but left in the motel room. She stopped finishing lunch. Every afternoon she asked the same question: "Are we still going to Cedar Ridge tomorrow?" "Yes," I told her. "What about next week?" "I am working on it." She never complained. That should have reassured me. Instead, it frightened me. A week into our motel stay, Elaine Foster, the school counselor, called. She asked if we could meet after dismissal. I expected careful questions about whether I could still care for my children. Instead, Elaine closed her office door and said Elowen seemed worried about losing her school. I told her the truth. We were living in a motel. I was looking for an apartment. A custody motion had been filed. Elaine did not look shocked or uncomfortable. She wrote down a name and phone number. Naomi Reed said, "She is the McKinney-Vento liaison for Bloomington Public Schools. She can help keep the children connected to school while your housing is unstable." The word homeless appeared on one of the forms Naomi gave me. I stared at it longer than I should have. Naomi noticed. "Living in a motel because you lost permanent housing can qualify," she said. "It does not mean you failed. It means your children may be eligible for support while you stabilize things." She helped arrange school breakfast and lunch supplies for Maisie and transportation on 2 mornings each week. She gave me information about a food pantry and an after-school program. I wanted to refuse all of it. I had spent years believing competent women handled their own problems quietly. Then I looked at Elowen's tired face and signed the forms. Temporary support had been filed on May 22. Gavin sent me $600 and labeled the transfer "Family Help." It did not cover 1 week of motel and daycare. Later that night, he sent a message. "If you come home, none of this has to be this hard." I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Simone. "Do not answer," she told me. So I did not. Gavin was answering for me everywhere else. A woman from my parents' church sent a message saying she had heard I had removed the children from a stable home. A cousin asked whether I was using the kids to punish Gavin. My mother told relatives I was acting emotionally and refusing reasonable solutions. Every version of the story made Gavin sound patient. I sounded reckless. Simone told me not to defend myself in family group chats or on social media. "The court will not care who tells the cleaner story at church," she said. "It will care what the record shows." I tried to believe her. Then Arlo started limping. His shoes had become too small almost overnight. The backs of his heels were red and blistered. I bought him a new pair for $42. That evening, I told the children I was not hungry and ate crackers beside the bathroom sink after they went to bed. Elowen appeared in the doorway holding half a sandwich wrapped in a napkin. "I already ate at school," she said. I knew she had not. I also knew she was offering me something she believed we could not afford to replace. I took the sandwich and sat beside her on the edge of the bed. "You do not have to save food for me," I said. She looked down at her hands. "Is the judge going to make us live with Dad because we are here?" I wanted to promise her no one could take them from me. Simone had warned me not to make guarantees about a process I could not control. "This motel is temporary," I said. "The court will look at who takes care of you and what keeps your lives stable. I am working on the next step." Her eyes lifted when she heard the phrase. She remembered the porch. She nodded, but the worry did not leave her face. At work, I kept moving. Medical records did not care that my marriage had collapsed. Requests still had deadlines. Patients still needed charts transferred. Insurance reviews still arrived marked urgent. Terrell Monroe had supervised me for nearly 6 years. She noticed that I was arriving early, staying through lunch, and clearing requests other people avoided. One afternoon, she closed the office door. "Are you having a housing problem?" she asked. I considered lying. Then I told her we were in a motel. Terrell did not offer pity. She opened a folder. A full-time position had opened after one of our coordinators transferred to another hospital. 40 hours, health insurance, predictable shifts, and some flexibility on 2 mornings each week. "You would have to apply," she said. "I am not promising you the position." "I understand. But you are qualified, Linnea. Do not confuse needing an opportunity with needing charity." I submitted the application that afternoon. The interview focused on patient privacy urgent requests backlogs and staffing shortages. I answered with examples from the work I had already been doing. 2 days later, Terrell called me into her office. "The position is yours." The salary was $52,000 a year with benefits. For the first time since leaving Gavin, I felt the ground move in the right direction. 3 days later, the first apartment complex rejected me. My income history was mostly part-time. Temporary support had not been ordered. My projected rent ratio did not meet their policy. I sat in the minivan outside the leasing office and let myself believe Gavin might have been right for almost 30 seconds. Then I called Terrell for an employment verification letter. I called Simone for documentation of the pending support request, and I called another apartment complex. Diane Mercer, the leasing manager, did not promise anything. She asked for my offer letter, bank statements, school information, and every document related to expected support. I brought the folder the next morning. While Diane reviewed it, Simone prepared me for the temporary hearing. Gavin wanted the children's primary residence placed with him. He had the original rental house, the larger income, and a job he now claimed was flexible. He also had 34 nights of motel receipts with my name on them. Simone asked who had handled the children's care during the marriage. I started listing everything: school calls, medical appointments, daycare, medicine, permission forms, parent conferences. She raised one hand. "We do not list everything in court," she said. "We prove the pattern." On June 21, Diane called. The apartment was approved. 2 bedrooms in Bloomington, $1,740 a month, $1,200 for the deposit. After I signed the lease, my savings account was almost empty. I did not care. Maisie chose yellow curtains bright enough to make the living room glow. Arlo carried his blanket to the smaller bedroom and placed it carefully on the mattress. Elowen stood in the kitchen holding one of the keys. "Is this a real home?" she asked. I opened the lease and showed her my name. "This one is ours." That night, after the children fell asleep, Simone called. Gavin had not withdrawn his motion. He planned to use every night in the motel as proof that I lacked stability. He had also requested a full custody evaluation of my income, housing, and ability to support the children long term. I stood in the kitchen with the new key pressed into my palm. I had found us a home. Now I had to prove that I had been the person holding together theirs all along. Chapter 3: The Receipts. Simone turned 10 years of invisible work into 3 folders. The first held school records, parent portal messages, pickup logs, emails with teachers, notices I had signed, and the contact forms listing me as the person to call first. The second held medical records, pediatric visits, dental appointments, allergy instructions, and the medication schedule taped inside Arlo's daycare bag. The third held daily care, Bright Step sign-in sheets, emergency contacts, calendar changes, and every message where Gavin canceled or shortened his time with the children. I had expected Simone to ask for everything. Instead, she closed 2 overfilled binders and pushed them back toward me. "We do not need to bury the court in paper," she said. "We need to show a pattern no one can reasonably deny." The pattern was simple. When something happened, they called me. When something needed remembering, I remembered it. When one of the children was sick, frightened, late, hungry, or missing a permission slip, I was the person who handled it. Dr. Priya Shaw's records confirmed that I had taken the children to nearly every medical appointment. Gavin had attended several routine visits, mostly when they fit his schedule, but he was not the primary contact and had never managed Arlo's allergy plan. That did not make him dangerous. It made his claim that he had always been equally involved difficult to support. In August, the court appointed Nora Bell to complete a custody evaluation. Nora was 41 direct, without being cold and careful with every word. She met with me in a small office near the Hennepin County Courthouse. "My job is not to reward either parent," she said. "I am looking at the best interests of the children." She asked about housing, school, health care, work schedules, communication, and what I believed a realistic parenting plan should look like. I told her I wanted joint legal custody. I wanted the children's primary residence to remain with me. I proposed alternating weekends with Gavin, 1 dinner during the week, 2 weeks in the summer, and divided holidays. Nora studied me for a moment. "You are not asking to limit contact because of the affair." "No," I said. "The affair ended our marriage. It did not end his relationship with the children." "What are you asking the court to consider what their lives actually look like, not what either of us says they should look like?" Gavin approached his interview differently. I learned the details later through Nora's summary and the questions Simone asked during preparation. Gavin emphasized his income. He emphasized the rental house. He emphasized that he had always provided for the family. Then Nora asked him the name of Maisie's teacher. He gave the name of her first-grade teacher from the previous year. She asked which daycare Arlo attended. He named a center we had toured but never used. She asked what dosage of allergy medication Arlo needed. Gavin said I handled that because I liked controlling medical details. He did not hear what he had admitted. I had not shut him out. He had decided the repetitive parts of parenting belonged to me, then claimed equal responsibility when a court began measuring them. The first weekend the children stayed with Gavin, Celeste was already at the house. No one had told me she would be there. I did not object simply because I disliked her. There was no order preventing Gavin from introducing her. I reminded myself that every reaction mattered now. At 8:30 on Saturday night, Elowin called. "Mom, Arlo is wheezing a little." My stomach tightened. "Is he having trouble speaking?" "No, he says his throat feels scratchy." "Tell Dad to check the blue medicine bag." There was a pause. "He says he has a green bag." Gavin had taken Maisie's overnight bag and left Arlo's medication kit in the minivan at pickup. I stayed on the phone while Gavin found the backup antihistamine listed in Arlo's written instructions. The symptoms remained mild, and Arlo did not need emergency care. Afterward, I sent Gavin one message: "Please check the medication bag against the pickup list next time." His reply came immediately. "You could have reminded me. I saved that too." 2 weeks later, Gavin ended his parenting weekend early. He said North Star had sent him on an emergency trip. I rearranged my work schedule and picked up the children. That evening, Celeste posted a photo from a steakhouse in downtown Minneapolis. Gavin's watch and hand were visible across the table. I sent the screenshot to Simone. I did not send it to my mother. I did not put it in a family group chat. I had stopped trying to win the version of the story people discussed over coffee. Then Cedar Ridge called. Elowin had started breathing too quickly during class and could not calm down. When I arrived, she was sitting in Elaine Foster's office with a sheet of drawing paper on her lap. The assignment had been simple: draw your home. Elowin had drawn 3: the Bloomington rental house, the motel room, our apartment. She had written a question beneath them: which one stays? Elaine gave us privacy but remained nearby. I sat beside Elowin. "You are safe," I said. She stared at the paper. "For how long?" "As long as I can make it safe." "What if the judge says we have to leave?" "We will handle whatever happens." Her fingers tightened around the edge of the page. "I tried not to eat too much at the motel." I did not speak. I knew you were running out of money. I thought if I was easy, maybe nobody would get tired of having me. Something inside me broke, quietly. Elowen looked at me. She did. You do not have to help me be the adult. Her eyes filled. You are allowed to be scared. You are allowed to need things. You do not have to be easy to keep. I heard Grandpa lock the door. I know. What if people only want us when we do not need anything? I pulled her against me. That is their failure, not yours. I did not tell her everything would be perfect. I told her she would never have to earn her place with me. While I was helping Elowen understand that Gavin was trying to turn my parents into evidence, he went to their house and asked Bowen to sign a statement describing me as emotional, impulsive, and financially unstable. Livette believed it would help the children remain in a proper home. Bowen did not agree immediately, but he did not throw Gavin out either. My mother asked Bryony to print the messages Gavin had sent before the night I arrived on their porch. Bowen wanted to review them before deciding what to write. That was how Bryony saw the entire thread. Gavin had written that I was reacting emotionally. He said I was using the children to punish him. Then he wrote something even clearer. Do not reward this by giving her somewhere to stay. If she has no place to go, she will have to come home and talk rationally. He had not merely warned my parents. He had advised them to close the door. He had used our children's housing as leverage. Bryony confronted my mother. You knew he wanted her trapped, she said. He wanted his family back, Livette replied. He wanted her to have no choice. My mother insisted Gavin had been desperate. Bryony finally heard how closely her own words on the porch had matched his. She texted me that night. Some of what I said came out wrong. I have been thinking about it. I read the message twice. Came out wrong was not the same as was wrong. I did not answer. The temporary hearing took place in July. Simone presented the 3 groups of evidence: school, medical care, daily caregiving. Gavin's attorney focused on the motel. He described 34 nights as though I had chosen instability rather than survived it. Norabelle answered calmly. Linnea had maintained school attendance, daycare, medical care, and contact with the father. She had found permanent housing within 34 days and used available school support appropriately. The motel stay does not demonstrate an inability to provide stability, Nora said. It demonstrates how she maintained continuity during a housing crisis. Judge Helena Brooks reviewed the support worksheet and parenting history. She ordered joint legal custody. The children's primary residence would remain with me temporarily. Gavin received alternating weekends and 1 weekday dinner. Temporary child support was set at about $2,100 a month, including basic support, daycare, and medical contributions. The amount would be credited against what he had already paid. I did not celebrate in the hallway. It was not a final order. But for the first time since I left, the system had looked at what I had done instead of only what Gavin earned. Bowen refused to sign the statement. He told Gavin he did not want to be involved. He still did not call me. Even after learning that Gavin had tried to use him against his own daughter, my father chose silence. That silence told me he knew the door should never have closed. He simply was not ready to admit he had helped close it. That evening, Gavin sent me a message. Temporary is not final. I can afford to keep this going longer than you can. A second message followed. Let us see what happens when they examine whether you can actually support 3 children long term. I had won the first order. Gavin still believed that if he made me tired enough, poor enough, and frightened enough, the truth would eventually stop mattering. Chapter 4. The Life I Built. The months that followed did not break me all at once. They tested me in smaller ways. A forgotten lunchbox on a Tuesday morning. A call from Bright Steps because Arlo had a fever 10 minutes before an audit meeting. A text from Natalie asking whether I could cover the afternoon queue after I had already promised Elowen I would take her to counseling. Some days I managed everything. Other days, I stood in the Lakeview parking garage with one shoe in my hand because I had changed out of wet boots in the minivan and forgotten to put the second shoe back on. I was not becoming superhuman. I was building systems. School drop-off went on one calendar, parenting time went on another. Arlo's medication lived in duplicate bags. Maisie's library books stayed beside the front door. Elowen's counseling appointments were scheduled before I accepted extra shifts. Natalie Price became the coworker I trusted when something went wrong. One morning, Arlo woke with a fever, and I called her before sunrise. I need to ask for a switch. You covered my daughter's appointment last week, she said. Take care of him. That simple exchange meant more than I expected. For years, Gavin had described every hour I spent caring for our children as time I was not contributing. At Lakeview, people understood that responsibility did not disappear just because it was unpaid. The medical records department had a backlog stretching 19 days. Some requests had been indexed under the wrong categories. Others were trapped between billing and care coordination because no one knew which queue should take priority. I showed Terrell what I had found. "We are doing the same work twice," I said, "and the urgent requests are waiting behind routine transfers. What would you change?" A priority queue, a short indexing checklist, and cross-training, so one person's absence does not stop an entire category. Terrell leaned back in her chair. "Put it in writing." We tested the process for 6 weeks. The backlog dropped from 19 days to 13, then to 10. By spring, it was down to 8. I trained 3 new employees, including Natalie. I helped prepare the department for a compliance audit, and for the first time in years, I began thinking of my job as something more than the smaller income in my marriage. In December, a card arrived from my father. The front showed a snow-covered church. Inside, Bowen had written only 5 words: "Thinking of you and the kids." Elowen recognized his handwriting. "Is Grandpa coming over?" "No." "Did he say he was sorry I looked at the card again?" "No." I placed it on the refrigerator because the children had a right to know he had remembered them. I did not confuse remembrance with accountability. A few weeks later, Bryony contacted me again. This time, she did not say her words had come out wrong. She sent screenshots of Gavin's messages to our mother. I read everything she wrote. "He wanted them to refuse you so you would have no choice but to go back." I repeated what he told them. "I treated you like you were reckless when you were trying to protect the kids. I was wrong." She attached the full message thread and said Simone could use it if it mattered. Then she added one final line: "I am not asking you to forgive me." I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. "Thank you for sending this. I am not ready to rebuild anything yet." Her reply came a minute later. "I understand." For once, she did not argue with the boundary. Nora Bell completed the custody evaluation near the end of the year. Her conclusion was measured. Gavin loved the children. He should remain involved in their lives. But his request for equal parenting time did not match the history of care, his travel schedule, or the children's established routines. She recommended joint legal custody, with the children's primary residence remaining with me. The final custody hearing took place on January 24, 2025. Gavin arrived in a dark suit with his attorney and a folder thick enough to look intimidating. Simone brought 3 organized binders. She did not mention Celeste unless it affected parenting time. She focused on the children, school stability, medical care, the weekends Gavin had canceled, the routines I had maintained before and after separation. Gavin's attorney returned repeatedly to income. He argued that Gavin could provide a larger home and more resources. Judge Helena Brooks listened without interrupting. When she issued the final order, her voice remained even. We would share joint legal custody. The children's primary residence would remain with me. Gavin would have alternating weekends, one Wednesday dinner every other week, 2 weeks during the summer, and divided holidays. All communication would go through a co-parenting app. Child support was set at approximately $2,100 per month, including basic support, daycare, and medical contributions. After accounting for what Gavin had already paid, he owed close to $15,000 in arrears under a payment schedule. Outside the courtroom, Gavin followed me toward the elevators. "You turned the children into evidence." I stopped and faced him. "No, you made me prove the work you never thought counted." The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside without waiting for his answer. Our divorce became final on February 14. There was no mansion to divide. The Bloomington house had been rented. I kept the minivan because I needed it for the children. Our joint savings were divided after outstanding expenses were accounted for. Retirement accounts were handled through the settlement. I did not leave court wealthy. I left knowing Gavin could no longer decide whether I had enough money to say no to him. My mother called 3 days later. "We are all relieved this worked out," Livette said. "The children were doing well. I had housing. The case was over." In her mind, those facts erased the decisions that had made everything harder. "We should put this behind us," she said. "Families cannot keep punishing each other forever. You had room for us." She went quiet. "You saw the children standing there. You heard Arlo ask where we would sleep. You still closed the door. We believed you were making a mistake. You believed protecting Gavin's version of the family mattered more than protecting us. You are holding on to anger. I am not holding a grudge. I am holding a boundary." I ended the call before she could turn my refusal into another family problem. By early summer, Gavin's relationship with Celeste began falling apart. Parenting weekends were no longer occasional interruptions. They were part of his life. He had to prepare meals, manage medication, wash clothes, and rearrange travel. Celeste had believed his marriage was already dead and that I had been the only obstacle between them and an easier life. Instead, she discovered that Gavin had lied to both of us. He was not a trapped man trying to escape responsibility. He was a man accustomed to letting someone else carry it. She left in June. Gavin moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment. Elowen and Maisie shared one room. Arlo had a pull-out bed. Gavin began adjusting his work schedule and completing more of his parenting time. I did not praise him for doing what the order required. I did acknowledge when the children came home fed, rested, and with the correct medicine. At Lakeview, Terrell called me into her office at the end of June. The department lead position was opening. The role meant supervising 8 employees, managing schedules, monitoring compliance, training, staff, and helping lead future audits. My first thought was childcare. My second was that I was not ready. Terrell seemed to read both thoughts. "Do not reject yourself before the panel has the opportunity to decide." I built a plan. After-school care, backup contacts, Gavin's parenting schedule, flexible start times, emergency arrangements for Arlo. During the interview, I spoke about the backlog, the audit, and the employees I had trained. I did not tell them I deserved the position because I had survived a divorce. I showed them the work. On July 7, Terrell called me. "You got it." The salary was $63,500 a year. "Why me?" I asked. "Because the backlog is down, the audit went well, and people stay calm when you are leading them." On August 16, the children and I moved into a 3-bedroom apartment in Bloomington. The rent was $2,260 a month. Elowen chose the room with the best corner for a desk. Maisie covered one wall with paper stars. Arlo finally had a bed that did not need to be folded away during the day. One evening, Elowen stood beside me at the kitchen counter while I packed lunches. "Mom, I think we are going to be okay." I looked at the 3 lunch bags, the calendar on the refrigerator, and the yellow curtains Maisie had insisted on bringing from the old apartment. "Yeah," I said, "I think so too." In September, Mrs. Calder announced that Elowen's class would hold a family resilience showcase on October 9. A week later, I discovered Elowen had mailed invitations to Lavette, Bowen, Bryony, and Landis. Landis never responded. I asked Elowen whether she was sure. She nodded. "I want them to hear what I learned." She had not invited them because she had forgotten the night on the porch. She had invited them because she wanted them to understand exactly what that night had left behind. Chapter 5. The Home I Choose. On October 9, 2025, I walked into the multi-purpose room at Cedar Ridge Elementary with my department lead badge still clipped to my blouse and the taste of bad school coffee already waiting for me. The room was filled with folding chairs, poster boards, parents, moving between displays, and children standing proudly beside projects they had spent weeks preparing. Elowen was near the center of the room. Her board was covered in blue paper, handwritten cards, and 3 drawings of houses. Maisie was already talking to another parent as if she had been hired to run the event. Arlo was sitting cross-legged on the floor, arranging crackers by size. For a few minutes, everything felt ordinary. Then Bryony walked in with Marcus. She saw me and stopped. She did not rush over. She gave me a small nod and stayed near the wall until Elowen noticed her. Bowen and Lavette arrived several minutes later. My father looked older than he had at Christmas. My mother looked exactly the same. Same careful hair, same pressed coat, same posture that suggested she still believed composure could control a room. Landis did not come. He had received the invitation. He had never responded. I did not ask anyone why. Elowen had invited them. That did not mean I had to manage their discomfort. I greeted them briefly, then turned back to my children. Maisie pulled Bryony toward her display and began explaining every detail without being asked. Arlo showed Bowen the plastic dinosaur he had brought in his pocket. My father crouched to look at it carefully and uncertain, as if he no longer knew what he was allowed to touch. Livette watched Elowen. I could see her taking in the changes. Elowen stood straighter. She spoke to Mrs. Calder without looking at me for reassurance. When she became nervous, she breathed the way Elaine Foster had taught her, instead of going silent. Nothing about our life was perfect. That was not what my family saw. They saw that the children were no longer waiting for someone to rescue us. Mrs. Calder called the room to attention. Each child had a few minutes to explain what resilience meant to them. When it was Elowen's turn, she stood beside her board and held a small stack of index cards. Her voice shook on the first sentence. Then she looked at me. I smiled. She looked back at the room. Being strong does not mean pretending nothing hurts. The room quieted. Sometimes the next safe step is leaving. Livette's face changed. Elowen pointed to the 3 drawings on her board. The first was the rental house in Bloomington. The second was the motel. The third was our apartment. A home is not always the biggest place, she said. A home is where you know what happens tomorrow. Mrs. Calder stepped closer to the final card on the board. It read, "Resilient people do not wait to be rescued. They figure out the next step." "That is a powerful sentence," Mrs. Calder said. "Did you find it in a book?" Elowen shook her head. "My mom said something like it when we did not know where we were going to sleep. The air left my lungs." She continued before I could react. "We were outside my grandparents' house, and they said we could not stay there. I asked if we were homeless. My mom said not for long, because she was figuring out the next step." Levitt went pale. Bowen looked at the floor. Bryony pressed one hand to her mouth. Elowen did not sound angry. That made it harder. She was simply telling the truth. "The thing that makes me feel safe is not whether a house is big," she said. "It is when my mom tells us what tomorrow is going to look like." Mrs. Calder thanked her. The room applauded. Elowen smiled relieved and looked at me. I wanted to hold her and apologize for every moment she had believed she needed to be brave for me. Instead, I let her have the applause. After the presentations, my family waited near the hallway leading to the front entrance. Bryony spoke first. I judged a crisis I did not understand. Her voice was quiet. I used my marriage to act like I knew more than you. I repeated what Gavin wanted all of us to believe. And when I told you my words came out wrong, that was not an apology. The words came out exactly the way I meant them at the time. She looked at Elowen's display through the open doorway. I was wrong. She did not ask me to forgive her. Bowen stepped forward next. I knew there was room. He rubbed one hand over the other. I saw Arlo standing there. I heard him ask where you would sleep. I had doubts about what Gavin told us, but I did not want another argument with your mother. I chose peace in my house over protecting my daughter. His eyes met mine. That card at Christmas was cowardly. I wanted you to know I was thinking about you without having to say I had failed you. For a moment, my mother said nothing. Then she lifted her chin. I was trying to protect the family. I felt the old pressure behind those words, the request to understand her before she had understood me. No, I said. You were protecting the image of the family. Her lips tightened. You thought I was making a mistake. You made sure I had nowhere to go so I would be forced to reverse it. I thought Gavin wanted his family back. He wanted control back. Bryony looked at her. Mom, say what you did. Livette's face softened, but not gracefully. It looked painful. I had room, she said. Her voice almost disappeared. I chose not to open the door. She took a breath. I believed a divorce would embarrass us. I believed Gavin because he had the job, the house, and the calmer story. I put that above what you and the children needed. She looked toward the multi-purpose room. I made Elowen think needing help could make her unwanted. That was the first moment I believed she understood even part of the damage. Can we come see your apartment, she asked. Can we start again? I thought about the motel key, the first lease, the yellow curtains, the new apartment, the years I had spent believing family access was something blood automatically provided. You had room for us, I said. You just chose not to make room. I have a home now, and I decide who feels safe inside it. No one interrupted. If we try again, it will be slow. No one gets to minimize what happened. No one defends Gavin or blames me in front of the children. No one tells me when I should move on. The first visits happen in public. Trust is built through consistency. I looked at each of them. If any of you make Elowen, Maisie, or Arlo feel like a burden again, the visit ends. Bryony nodded first. I understand. Bowen followed. So do I. Livette took several seconds, then she nodded. There was no group hug. No one said everything was fixed. Apologies did not restore the relationship we had before. They only created the possibility of building a different one. Bryony was the first to prove she meant what she said. She did not overwhelm me with messages. She arrived on time when I invited her to meet us for lunch. She did not defend our mother. Bowen's first visit with the children happened at the public library. He brought books instead of expensive gifts. Before they left, he sat beside Elowen and told her adults sometimes make choices that make children feel unsafe, and that what happened on the porch was his fault, not hers. Livette had a harder time. She still tried to explain when she needed to listen. She still treated silence as a problem she should solve. But when I stopped a conversation, she stopped too. Landis remained silent. I let him. I was no longer waiting for every member of my family to become the person I needed. Gavin settled into his 2-bedroom apartment and followed the parenting schedule more consistently. We communicated through the co-parenting app. School pickup, medication, dinner times, appointments. I no longer debated the marriage with him. The only relationship left between us was the one involving the children. On October 31, the 4 of us came home after an ordinary day. Maisie hung her coat on the wrong chair. Arlo left both shoes directly in the doorway. Elowen placed her resilience project beside her desk. I paid the electric bill and checked the balance afterward. There was still money in the account. The refrigerator was full. Each child had a bed. My emergency fund had reached $8,400. It was not wealth. It was not a miracle. No inheritance had arrived. No stranger had rescued me. This life had been built from work, records, help I had learned to accept, and decisions that frightened me before they freed me. Before bed, I checked the front door. I turned the lock. For months, that sound had taken me back to my parents' porch. Now, it meant something else. This door was attached to a lease with my name on it. I decided when it opened. I decided when it closed. And no one inside my home would ever have to beg for the right to belong there. If you were in my place, would you allow my parents back into the children's lives after what they did? Or did their apology come too late? And did Bryony do enough to deserve a second chance share? Where you would draw the boundary? In the comments. And stay with the channel for more stories about women who stopped begging for space in someone else's life and built a home of their own.